cloud computing and software as a service. Cloud computing is a fancy term to describe that your software is online and borrowed, instead of purchased and actually installed on your computer. Web-based email is the most prevalent example of cloud computing. The user's email is all stored and accessed in the cloud of the Internet, and not actually on their own computers. This is the modern version of the 1970s mainframe computing model. As part of the cloud computing model, software as a service is the business model that claims people would rather rent software than actually own it. With their web browsers, users access the cloud of the Internet and log into their online rented copies of their software as a service software. Cloud computing is a somewhat nebulous term to describe users renting or borrowing online software instead of actually purchasing and installing it on their own computers. It is the same business model as people using Mail or Yahoo Mail services, except that cloud computing goes much further and includes daily computing activities. Cloud computing is where entire businesses and hundreds of employees will run their computer tools as online rented products. All of the processing work and file saving will be done in the cloud of the Internet, and the users will plug into that cloud every day. Cloud computing involves three major premises: online file storage, that is private online CyberLocker software, as a service platform. As a service, online file storage has been around for many years, but is now becoming very widespread, as hard drive space now costs less than $1 per gigabyte. Google Docs, Microsoft SkyDrive, Dropbox, Asus Cloud Storage, and many hundreds of providers now offered free or low-cost online storage for users. Software and platform as a service describe the business model of users logging into a centralized hub to access their software products. Users open their files and software only while online, using only their web browser and passwords. It is similar to the idea of mainframe terminals, but cloud computing involves a much larger cloud network of processing computers at the center. Software as a service or cloud. Example 1. Instead of selling you a copy of Microsoft Word for $300, a cloud computing model would rent word processing software to you through the Internet for perhaps $5 a month. You would not install any special software, nor would you be confined to your home machine to use this rented online product. You simply use your modern web browser to log in from any web-enabled computer, and you can access your word processing documents in the same way that you would access your mail. Software as a service or cloud. Example 2. Your small car sales business would not spend thousands of dollars on a sales database. Instead, the company owners would rent access to a sophisticated online sales database, and all the car salesmen would access that information through their web-enabled computers or handhelds. The benefits of software as a service or cloud computing. The primary benefit of cloud computing is reduced cost for everyone involved. Software vendors do not have to spend thousands of hours supporting users over the phone. They would simply maintain and repair a single central copy of the product online. Conversely, users wouldn't have to shell out the large upfront costs of fully purchasing word processing, spreadsheet, or other end-user products. Users would instead pay nominal rental fees to access the large central copy. The downsides of cloud computing. The risk of cloud computing is that the users must place a high level of trust into the online software vendors, that they will not disrupt the service. In a way, the software vendor holds its customers hostage, because all of their documentation and productivity is now in the vendor's hands. Security and protection of the file privacy becomes even more necessary, as the massive Internet is now part of the business network. What makes cloud computing different than virtual servers? Most often, cloud computing is talked about in terms of service in the cloud or running services in the cloud. It's this service component that makes cloud computing so much more than just virtual server space. George Rees, CTO of nStratus Networks and author of the book Cloud Application Architectures, prefers speaking about cloud computing in terms of service. That, he says, is the way the cloud really affects people and businesses. Rees provides a set of criteria to determine whether a service can be called a cloud service. Who is responsible for the maintenance and deployment of applications in the cloud really depends on what type of presence you have in the cloud. The most significant difference between the cloud computing model and virtual servers is that cloud computing provides users with a number of different options for doing what they want to do. The three most commonly talked about are software as service, platform as service, and infrastructure as service. With SaaS, the applications and the data used within the applications are all stored in the cloud, which means the user doesn't need any additional software or hardware on-premise in order to use and access them, and often a standard web browser is used. Rees expands on this idea, explaining that software as service is a solution that eliminates the need to use licensed software. The downside of this? Privacy. Rees notes that when you are using online software solutions, you need to be much more aware of privacy and security concerns. When you're using applications like Google Docs for writing and collaborations, it's available to you from any computer, anytime, anywhere. Dan Hoffman of M5 Networks points out that most everyone uses the cloud this way, citing online banking as an example. Cloud computing companies have larger resources than the typical business or individual. Instead of one laptop and a desktop computer or a couple of servers, there are multiple servers keeping track of data. When one of them goes down, it doesn't mean everything is lost, nor does it mean that everything grinds to a halt. And cost? Well, the cost benefits are obvious. Both Symantec's Paul Wooden and Stratus George Rees speak to the extraordinary opportunities cloud computing provides for companies. Wood points out that it allows companies to shift from capital expenditure to operational expenditure, because instead of factoring in the costs of hardware depreciation, the cost of the cloud computing subscription model remains relatively steady. Rees says it allows companies to focus more on functional usage costs than investing in possible non-critical expenditures. The risks of living in the cloud. As with everything, cloud computing has its risks. Velt and his co-author, Toby Velt, outline some of the risks of moving to a cloud computing society. As we are ever more dependent on our services to run our businesses, outages can be disastrous, state the Velts. So we must have a very high level of confidence in our providers. There is also compliance issue. Is the provider keeping us compliant? As well as geopolitical issues, where is the data really sitting? And control challenges. What if I need to make changes now? Rees speaks of these concerns as the flip side of the not my problem view of cloud computing. If, he says, the cloud means not my problem, it also means not in my control. As a result, you have to be very aware of the security and privacy controls your cloud vendor has in place so you can feel comfortable they are supporting your needs.